It began with angry farmers setting fire to a report 18 months ago, but has finished with little fanfare. The consultation period for a plan to overhaul water usage throughout the entire Murray-Darling Basin has finally come to an end. On the surface, there appears to be little progress, with the New South Wales, Victorian and South Australian governments all rejecting the Basin Authority's draft proposal to take nearly 2,800 gigalitres of water away from irrigators in order to improve the health of the river system. But the Basin Authority says ultimately it will be up to state and federal political leaders to ensure the plan succeeds. Peter McCutcheon reports.
Farmers in the New South Wales Riverina are reaping the benefits of successive good seasons. But this bumper rice crop is only possible through irrigation, and rights to extract water from surrounding creeks and rivers are strongly defended.
Any cut in water here will just really decimate the area.
Watching this year's harvest with keen interest is irrigator Helen Dalton.
Good, thanks. Well, what's happening? We're all filled up, are we?
Yeah, filled up.
But as well as checking on harvest logistics, Helen Dalton is nervously monitoring plans to overhaul the entire system of water extraction in the Murray-Darling Basin.
I'm a little bit cynical about the process, I have to say, but I'm hoping that things will, they'll turn out and they'll actually listen to us and make changes to the plan.
And that sentiment can be found throughout the Murray-Darling system, although those farming hundreds of kilometres downstream are hoping for a very different outcome. They would like to see more water given back to the environment in New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland to improve the health of their river systems and lakes in South Australia.
The river will die from the bottom up, so unless you're flushing it through to the sea, gradually you just get an incline of salt throughout the whole system.
Sam Dodd is a fifth-generation farmer near the Murray mouth by the banks of what is now a salty Lake Albert.
There's about 270 gigalitres at full capacity in this lake, and it's really no good.
Your comments to a meeting of stakeholders.
Trying to find a path through these interests is the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, which has just completed a 20-week consultation period on its draft plan to improve the health of the river system.
We do need to get a plan in place that respects the use of water for whatever it's used for food production or for environmental purposes, for its most efficient and effective method of delivery.
But that's easier said than done. The South Australian government argues the authority's draft proposal to return 2,750 gigalitres to the environment doesn't go far enough. But the Victorian and New South Wales governments and their respective peak farming groups want to see less water taken away from irrigation communities.
I guess the major problem is it's still very much irrigators versus the environment. It's still very much saying we've got to take water away from irrigated agriculture and rural communities, and we've got to tip it down the river, and that's somehow going to save the river.
Now, the authority has tried to get around this irrigators versus environment standoff by saying its preference is to save water through more expensive infrastructure improvements, rather than simply buying out water rights. But the devil will be in the detail.
They're efficiency measures which leave the community with the water. None of that detail is yet filtered into the basin plan. It's still very much a document of purchasing water.
And that's what concerns irrigation communities, especially in the New South Wales Riverina.
I think that's the most un-Australian thing that I've ever seen.
In response to the perceived threat of the basin plan, these irrigators have formed a group called Women for a Living Basin.
I'm from Colliambly, which is a small purpose-built irrigation community established about 50 years ago by a state Labor government initiative. Small community, town population about 660 people. If water leaves our community, even if it is not a mandatory acquisition, it means less money to be spent in our communities, and it means less job in our communities.
But downstream in South Australia, farmer Sam Dodd says this is the sort of thing his community has already gone through.
We've seen what happens when you don't get any flow of water. We're just as much irrigators down here at the bottom. We have exactly the same capital investment, but our industries have totally collapsed, and they must realise that their industries eventually will collapse in just the same way ours do if we do not have a system that is environmentally sustainable.
As the Basin Plan consultation period came to an end, Aboriginal elders from the Lower Murray performed the Ring-Barlin, a series of healing ceremonies over 2 weeks covering thousands of kilometres from Queensland to the Murray mouth. But the healing of what many scientists see as a damaged river system will also require the political will of state and federal governments.
This is ultimately going to be about leadership. Leadership in the broadest sense of the word by our governments, demonstrating to the Australian community that they can get over what in many cases has been more than 150 odd years of parochial state-by-state management and manage for the well-being of the entire nation.
Thanks, Peter McCutcheon.